The power went out at exactly 4:30 in the afternoon, right in the middle of my favorite cooking show. One moment I was watching someone fold phyllo dough into perfect triangles, and the next I was sitting in complete silence, the television screen dark, the refrigerator's hum suddenly absent. I sat there for a moment in my worn recliner, confused, because storms didn't just appear out of nowhere and it had been a perfectly clear September day. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Helen Cartwright, 71 years old, and I've lived in this modest ranch house in Riverside, Ohio for 43 years. My husband Donald built the deck out back himself, planted the oak tree that now shades half the yard, and spent his final years in the sunroom he'd added when he retired. He passed 5 years ago from a sudden stroke, leaving me the house, a small pension, and the kind of loneliness that settles into your bones like winter cold. I thought I had my son Marcus. I thought I had family who cared. I was wrong about a lot of things. I got up from the recliner and checked the breaker box in the basement, flipping switches that refused to change anything. The house stayed dark and silent. That's when I noticed my neighbor's porch light was on across the street, glowing cheerfully in the late afternoon sun. Their power was fine. It was just my house sitting in darkness. I called the electric company from my cell phone, standing in my kitchen and staring at the digital clock on the microwave that now displayed nothing but black glass. The automated system informed me that my service had been disconnected due to non-payment. I pressed 0 repeatedly until a human voice finally answered. There must be some mistake, I told the woman on the other end. I pay my bills on time. I always have. She asked for my account number, put me on hold, and came back with a tone that suggested she'd heard this story 1,000 times before. According to our records, ma'am, your account is 4 months past due. The total owed is $2,317. We sent multiple notices. I never received any notices, I insisted. And I pay my bill every month through automatic withdrawal. Has been for years. There's no automatic payment set up on this account, she said. And the mailing address was recently changed to a post office box. The service address remained the same, but all correspondence went to the P.O. box. Who changed it? Only an authorized account holder can make those changes. Do you have anyone else on the account? My son, Marcus, had power of attorney. He'd convinced me to sign it 2 years ago when Donald died, saying it would make things easier if I got sick or couldn't manage things myself. He was my only child, and I trusted him completely. I trusted him with everything. I'm looking into this, I told the woman. Can you turn my power back on? Not until the past due amount is paid in full, plus a reconnection fee of $150. We can take payment over the phone. I gave her my credit card information, wincing at the amount but having no choice. I needed electricity. I needed lights and refrigeration and the ability to cook meals and watch television and live like a normal person. The charge went through, and she promised someone would come restore service within 24 hours. I hung up and stood in my darkening kitchen, my hands shaking with something that wasn't quite anger yet, wasn't quite fear, but lived somewhere between the two. 4 months of unpaid bills. A changed mailing address. Marcus had power of attorney, which meant he had access to my accounts, my mail, my financial life. But why would he let my electricity bill go unpaid? It made no sense. Marcus worked as a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company, made good money, lived in a nice house with his wife Vanessa in the newer development across town. He'd never needed to borrow money from me, never asked for anything except that power of attorney. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking him to call me back, that it was important, trying to keep my voice steady and not accusatory. Then I sat in the growing darkness and waited. He didn't call back that evening. The house got colder as the sun went down and the heating system didn't kick on. I wrapped myself in blankets and tried to sleep in my recliner, too unsettled to go upstairs to bed. The power came back on the next morning at around 10, the sudden hum of appliances startling me awake from an uncomfortable doze. I made coffee, my hands still unsteady, and called Marcus again. This time Vanessa answered his phone. "Oh, Helen," she said in that bright, brittle voice she used when she wanted to sound pleasant but wasn't. Marcus is in meetings all morning. Can I have him call you? My electricity was shut off yesterday, I said. For non-payment. Do you know anything about that? Silence on the other end, just long enough to be noticeable. That's terrible, she said finally. Are you okay? Did you get it turned back on? I paid over $2,000 to get it restored. The bill hadn't been paid in 4 months. Someone changed the mailing address on the account. Vanessa made a sympathetic noise. You know, Helen, Marcus and I have been worried about you. Living alone at your age, managing all those bills and accounts, it's easy for things to slip through the cracks. Nothing slipped through the cracks. I pay my bills on time. Someone deliberately changed my mailing address. Well, Vanessa said slowly, maybe you should talk to Marcus about simplifying things. We've actually been discussing whether it might be time for you to consider a senior living community, somewhere with fewer responsibilities. I don't need a senior living community. I need to know why my electricity bill wasn't paid when I have automatic payments set up. I'll have Marcus call you, she said, and hung up before I could respond. I spent the rest of that day going through my files, pulling out bank statements and utility bills from the past year. The automatic payment to the electric company had stopped 6 months ago. Just stopped, with no explanation, no notice to me. I'd been so focused on other things, on grief and loneliness and the daily routine of living alone, that I hadn't noticed. My bank statement showed the money staying in my account instead of going to the utility company, but I'd never canceled that automatic payment. Someone else had. Marcus finally called that evening. Mom, Vanessa said you had some trouble with your electric bill. His voice was casual, unconcerned, like we were discussing the weather. My electricity was shut off, Marcus. For 4 months of non-payment, someone changed the mailing address and canceled my automatic payments. That's concerning, he said. Are you sure you didn't do that yourself and forget? Maybe hit the wrong button online? I didn't do anything. And I want to know if you did, since you have power of attorney. He laughed, but it sounded forced. Mom, come on. Why would I mess with your electricity bill? I don't know, Marcus. Why would you? Listen, he said, his tone shifting to something more serious. Vanessa and I have been worried about you. You're getting older, living alone in that big house. Maybe this is a sign that it's getting too much for you to manage. This isn't about me being unable to manage. This is about someone deliberately interfering with my accounts. We should sit down and talk, he said. About your future. About what makes sense at this stage of your life. There are some really nice facilities where you'd have help with daily tasks, social activities, medical care if you need it. I don't need a facility. I need answers about my electricity bill. We'll talk soon, he said, and ended the call before I could press further. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Something was very wrong. Marcus was deflecting, Vanessa was being condescending, and neither of them seemed surprised about the electricity situation. The power of attorney was supposed to be for emergencies, for helping me if I couldn't help myself, not for taking control of my life without my knowledge or consent. I needed to understand what was really happening, and I had a terrible suspicion that the electricity bill was just the beginning. The next morning I drove across town to Marcus and Vanessa's house, something I rarely did without calling first. They lived in Heritage Oaks, a development of large homes with perfect lawns and 3-car garages. Their house was a colonial style with white columns and black shutters, the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I pulled into their driveway and immediately noticed something that made my stomach drop. Solar panels. Rows and rows of them, gleaming black rectangles covering the entire south-facing roof. They were new, clearly just installed, the roof still looking fresh around them. I sat in my car staring up at those panels, my mind racing. Solar panels were expensive. I knew that much. $20, $30, maybe $40,000 depending on the system. And here they were, brand new and pristine, on my son's house while my electricity had just been shut off for non-payment. I got out of the car slowly, my legs feeling unsteady. The front door opened before I could ring the bell, and Vanessa stepped out wearing yoga pants and an expensive-looking sweater, her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. Helen, she said with surprise that looked a little too practiced. We weren't expecting you. I can see that. I gestured toward the roof. New solar panels? Aren't they beautiful? She smiled widely. We just had them installed last week. The whole system, plus battery backup. We're completely energy independent now. Our electric bills will be basically nothing. How much did they cost? That's rather personal, Helen. Given that my electricity was just shut off while you're installing $40,000 worth of solar panels, I think I have a right to ask. Vanessa's smile dimmed. We saved for these. Planned for them. It has nothing to do with your situation. Where's Marcus? He's at work. You should have called before coming over. I did call. Multiple times. He keeps deflecting. Now I want answers.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Vanessa crossed her arms, her friendly mask slipping entirely. Marcus has been managing your affairs very carefully, Helen. He's trying to protect you from yourself. Protect me from myself? You're 71 years old, living alone, clearly having trouble managing your bills. He's doing what any good son would do. By letting my power get shut off? That doesn't sound protective. That sounds like neglect. Or something worse. You should go, Vanessa said, her voice cold now. Marcus will call you when he has time. I'm not leaving until I get answers. This is our home. You're not welcome here without an invitation. I stared at my daughter-in-law, this woman my son had married 8 years ago, and saw something in her eyes that I'd been blind to before. Calculation. Contempt. The look of someone who saw me as an obstacle rather than family. I left, but I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to First National Bank where I'd had accounts for 40 years. I asked to speak with a manager, and was directed to a young woman named Rachel, who looked barely old enough to have graduated college. I need to review all the activity on my accounts for the past 6 months, I told her. Everything. Transfers, withdrawals, any changes to automatic payments or account settings. Rachel pulled up my information, her expression shifting as she scrolled through screens. Mrs. Cartwright, I see there have been quite a few changes to your accounts recently. What kind of changes? Your checking account had automatic bill pay services canceled 3 months ago. Several of them. Electric, gas, water, phone, insurance premiums. Everything was switched to manual payments. Who authorized those changes? She clicked a few more times. It shows your son Marcus Cartwright made the changes. He has power of attorney on file with us. But I never asked him to cancel those payments. I never knew they were canceled. Rachel's expression became uncomfortable. With power of attorney, he has the legal authority to make those changes without your specific approval. That's what the document allows. Show me everything he's done with my accounts. What followed was a nightmare of small revelations that added up to something devastating. Marcus had canceled all my automatic payments 3 months ago. He'd opened a new savings account in my name and been transferring $500 a month into it from my checking account. He'd set up online banking access that went to his email address instead of mine. He'd changed my mailing address with the bank to a P.O. box. And 2 weeks ago, he'd attempted to add Vanessa as a joint owner on my checking account, a request that had been flagged and was pending review. Why would he need to add his wife to my account? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Joint ownership would give her equal access to all funds, Rachel explained. The ability to withdraw, transfer, or close the account without your signature. The flagging was automatic because you're over 65 and we have protocols for potential elder financial abuse. We sent a letter to your address on file, asking you to come in and verify the request. That address is a P.O. box I don't control. I never got any letter. Rachel's eyes widened with understanding. Mrs. Cartwright, I think you need to speak with our fraud prevention department. This looks like financial exploitation. I'd like to remove Marcus's power of attorney. Can I do that here? You can, but you'll need to complete some paperwork and possibly consult with an attorney. The power of attorney document itself might need to be formally revoked. How long will that take? She hesitated. A few days, maybe a week. In the meantime, Marcus still has legal access to your accounts. Can you freeze them? Prevent any transactions? We can place a hold. But given his legal authority, it's complicated. I suggest you speak with an attorney today. Do you have someone you can call? I nodded, though I wasn't sure. Donald had used a lawyer named Robert Chen for his will and estate planning. I still had his card somewhere. I need to think about this, I said, standing up. But thank you for showing me the truth. As I walked out of the bank, my phone rang. It was Marcus. Mom, Vanessa said you came by the house. You can't just show up unannounced like that. Why are you stealing from me? I asked, my voice shaking. What? That's a horrible thing to say. You canceled all my automatic payments. Let my electricity get shut off. Transferred money out of my accounts. Changed my mailing address. Added your wife to my checking account without telling me. And you just installed expensive solar panels while leaving me in the dark. Literally. Mom, calm down. You're getting confused. No, Marcus. I'm not confused. I just came from the bank. I saw everything you've done. Listen to me. His voice took on a harder edge. You signed power of attorney because you needed help managing things. That's what I'm doing. Managing things. You're stealing from me. I'm protecting your assets. You're not thinking clearly. That house is too much for you. Your bills are piling up because you can't keep track of them anymore. The best thing for everyone is if you move into a care facility and let me handle your finances properly. I'm not moving anywhere. And I'm revoking your power of attorney. You can't do that. You're not competent to make that decision. I'm perfectly competent. Really? Because you let your electricity get shut off, you can't manage your bills, and now you're accusing your own son of theft. That sounds like dementia to me. You let my electricity get shut off, I said quietly. That was you. You canceled the automatic payment and redirected my mail so I wouldn't know. Why would I do that? To make me look incompetent. To build a case that I can't take care of myself. That's paranoid thinking, Mom. You need help. I'm getting my lawyer. I'm taking back control of my accounts. And I want to know where every penny of my money has gone. Marcus was quiet for a moment. If you try to fight me on this, he said finally, I'll have you declared mentally incompetent. I have documentation, medical opinions, evidence that you can't manage your own affairs. You'll end up in a state-run facility instead of the nice place Vanessa and I picked out for you. Is that what you want? I hung up without answering, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. My own son. My only child. The boy I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for. He was threatening me, stealing from me, trying to have me declared incompetent so he could take everything. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and cried for the first time since Donald died. Not just tears but deep-wrenching sobs that came from somewhere I'd been keeping locked away. Grief for my husband, yes, but also grief for my son, for the relationship I thought we had, for the man I'd believed him to be. All of it was a lie. All of it was gone. When I could finally breathe again, I found Robert Chen's card in my wallet and called his office. I need help, I told his receptionist. My son has power of attorney and he's stealing from me. I need to stop him. The receptionist put me through to Robert immediately. Mrs. Cartwright, he said, and I could hear the concern in his voice. I remember you and Donald. Tell me what's happening. So I did. Everything. The electricity shut off, the canceled payments, the bank accounts, the solar panels, Marcus's threats. When I finished, Robert was quiet for a long moment. This is serious, he said finally. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. But Marcus has legal power of attorney, which complicates things. How do I revoke it? You can. But if he fights it, he'll try to have you declared incompetent. That's a court process. You'd need to prove you have full mental capacity. I do have full mental capacity. I believe you. But we'll need documentation. Medical evaluations, cognitive testing, that sort of thing. Can you do that quickly? I can make some calls. But Mrs. Cartwright, you need to understand that once we start this process, Marcus will escalate. He'll fight hard to maintain control. And he may try to isolate you or restrict your access to resources. I'm already isolated. I'm 71 years old, alone, with a son who's stealing from me. How much worse can it get? Robert's pause told me the answer was much worse. Let me make some calls. In the meantime, don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, and document everything that happens. If Marcus threatens you, if he or his wife show up at your house, if anything happens, you write it down with dates and times. Understand? I understand. And Mrs. Cartwright? This is going to be hard. I know. I hung up and drove home, my mind numb. The house felt different when I walked in, less like a sanctuary and more like a trap. How long had Marcus been planning this? When had it started? Was it right after Donald died? Or had he been waiting years for the opportunity? I made tea I didn't drink and sat at my kitchen table as afternoon faded to evening. My phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Cartwright. A woman's voice, older, kind. This is Dorothy Brennan. I live 4 houses down from you on Maple Street. We've met at neighborhood association meetings. I remember. Is everything all right, Dorothy? I hope I'm not overstepping, but I wanted you to know something. I was talking to my daughter yesterday, and she mentioned that she works at the medical center where your son's wife Vanessa has an office. Vanessa works at the medical center? She's a physician's assistant in the geriatric care unit. I didn't know that. She just started there 3 months ago. But the thing is, my daughter overheard Vanessa talking to another PA about you, saying she was trying to help her mother-in-law get placed in memory care because you were showing signs of severe cognitive decline. She was asking about expedited placement procedures and what documentation would be needed. I haven't seen Vanessa in person more than twice in the last 3 months. How would she know anything about my cognitive function? That's what my daughter thought too. She said it sounded off. Like Vanessa was laying groundwork for something. I wanted to warn you. Dorothy's voice softened. My mother went through something similar with my brother 5 years ago. He tried to have her declared incompetent so he could take control of her finances. It was ugly. How did it end? Mom fought back. Got a good lawyer. Got medical evaluations proving she was sharp as a tack. My brother ended up with a restraining order and no inheritance. But it took 2 years and cost her almost everything she had in legal fees. I can't afford a 2-year legal battle. Then you need to move fast and you need allies. Do you have other family? Anyone who can help? I have a sister in Pennsylvania. We haven't been close in years, but maybe. Call her. Explain everything. You need people on your side, Helen. And if you need anything at all, you call me. I mean it. We neighbors need to look out for each other. After Dorothy hung up, I sat with my cold tea and thought about my sister Lorraine. We'd had a falling out 15 years ago over something I couldn't even remember anymore. Just pride and stubbornness keeping us apart. She'd called when Donald died, come to the funeral, but we'd barely spoken since. Would she help me now? I found her number and dialed before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the second ring. Helen? Is everything okay? Not really. Lorraine? I need help. What happened? I took a deep breath and told her everything. Unlike Marcus, unlike Vanessa, Lorraine didn't interrupt, didn't question, didn't suggest I was confused. She just listened. When I finished, she said 4 words that made me cry again. I'm coming out there. Lorraine, you don't have to drive all the way from Pennsylvania. I'm not driving. I'm flying. I'll be there tomorrow night. We'll figure this out together. What would I do without you? You're never going to have to find out. Family protects family, Helen. That's what Mom and Dad taught us. Even if we forgot it for a while, get some rest. Lock your doors. Don't let Marcus in your house. I'll call you when I land tomorrow. That night I did lock my doors. Something I rarely did in my quiet neighborhood. I checked every window, made sure the basement door was secure. Then I sat down at my computer and started documenting everything. Just like Robert had said. Dates, times, conversations, the electricity shut-off, the bank meeting, Marcus's threats. I printed bank statements and highlighted every suspicious transaction. I created a folder of evidence that was growing thicker by the hour. Around midnight, I heard a car pull into my driveway. I looked out the window to see Marcus's SUV. He got out, walked up to my front door, and knocked. Hard. Mom, open the door. I know you're awake. I stayed silent, watching from the darkened living room. He knocked again, harder. Mom, we need to talk. This is ridiculous. Still, I didn't answer. After a few more minutes, he pulled out his phone. Mine rang immediately. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail that I listened to later, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Vanessa and I are trying to help you, and you're being paranoid and difficult. If you don't start cooperating, I'll have no choice but to pursue legal options. You're not well, Mom. You need help whether you realize it or not. He got back in his car and drove away. But I couldn't sleep. I kept expecting him to come back, to try to force his way in, though rationally I knew he wouldn't do that. Would he? I didn't know anymore what my son was capable of. The next day dragged by in anxious waiting. Robert Chen called to say he'd arranged for me to see a geriatric psychiatrist the day after tomorrow. The doctor would do a complete cognitive evaluation that we could use as evidence of my competency. In the meantime, he was filing papers to formally revoke Marcus's power of attorney, but it would take time to process through the courts. Do I have time? I asked. I don't know, he said honestly, but we're moving as fast as we can. That evening, Lorraine texted that she'd landed and was getting a rental car. She arrived at my house at 8:30, pulling up in a little sedan and hurrying up my front walk like she thought someone might try to stop her. I opened the door and there was my sister, 68 years old with gray hair cut short and glasses perched on her nose, wearing jeans and a cardigan and looking exactly like what she was. A retired schoolteacher who didn't take nonsense from anyone. Helen, she said, and pulled me into a hug that made me realize how long it had been since anyone had hugged me. I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner. I'm sorry about all of it. Let me see this evidence you've collected. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. Lorraine took notes, asked questions, and got progressively angrier as the full scope of Marcus's actions became clear. That little snake, she said finally. Donald would be horrified. Donald trusted Marcus too much. We both did. Tomorrow we're going to the bank together, and you're going to remove him from every account you have. Then we're going to change all your passwords, forward your mail to my address, and document every single thing he's stolen. That won't be enough. No, but it's a start. And when your lawyer gets the power of attorney revoked, we're going to pursue charges for financial exploitation. Can I actually do that? He's my son. He's a thief who's preying on his elderly mother. Family doesn't get a pass for that. We slept in shifts that night, Lorraine insisting we take turns staying awake in case Marcus came back. He didn't, but around 3 in the morning I got a text from an unknown number. A photo of my house, taken from across the street. No message, just the photo. I showed it to Lorraine. They're watching you, she said grimly. Trying to intimidate you. Is it working? Yes. But I'm too angry to let it work. The next morning we went to the bank together. Rachel the manager remembered me and seemed relieved to see I had someone with me. This is my sister, I told her. She's going to be my new emergency contact and power of attorney. Only if there's an actual emergency, Lorraine said firmly. My sister is perfectly capable of managing her own affairs. Rachel helped us remove Marcus from all access to my accounts, change passwords, and set up notifications that would alert me to any transactions over $100. We also requested copies of every transaction Marcus had made using his power of attorney over the past 6 months. What you'll see, Rachel warned, isn't going to be pleasant. I want to know the truth. She printed reports that showed a systematic draining of my accounts. $500 here, $1,000 there, cash withdrawals at ATMs, transfers to accounts I couldn't identify. In 6 months, Marcus had taken almost $30,000 from me. $30,000. The number sat in my stomach like a stone. That was money Donald and I had saved over decades. Money I needed to live on. Money that was supposed to last me for the rest of my life. And my son had just taken it, convinced himself he deserved it, or that I wouldn't notice, or that I was too weak to stop him. Where did it all go? I asked. Some of those accounts I can't access, Rachel said. But this one here. She pointed to a series of transfers. That's an account registered to Vanessa Cartwright. Your daughter-in-law. He was giving my money to his wife. Looks that way. Rachel's expression was sympathetic but firm. Mrs. Cartwright. I need to report this to our fraud department. This is clear financial abuse. I want it reported, I said. I want a record of everything. We left the bank with folders full of evidence and a determination that felt like armor. Next stop was the police station where we filed a report for financial exploitation. The officer who took our statement was a woman in her 40s named Sergeant Patricia Mills who'd clearly seen this before. How much has he taken total? She asked. At least $30,000 that we can document. There might be more. And he has power of attorney? I gave it to him 2 years ago. I trusted him. I understand, but that complicates prosecution. With POA, he had legal authority to access your accounts, even to steal from them. Not technically, but it makes the case harder to prove. We'd need to show he was acting against your interests and without your knowledge. Sergeant Mills looked at the bank statements. These cash withdrawals, those are unusual. Makes it look like he was trying to hide the transactions. And the transfers to his wife's account, that's harder to justify as acting in your best interests. What happens now? I file the report. It gets investigated. But you should know that these cases move slowly and often don't result in criminal charges. The family usually settles things civilly. My family is trying to have me declared incompetent and put in a home so they can steal everything I have. That's what Sergeant Mills said. Why you need to move fast. Get that power of attorney revoked, get medical evaluations showing competency, and document everything. If they escalate, if they threaten you or try to forcibly remove you from your home, you call 911 immediately. Do you understand? I understand. After leaving the police station, Lorraine and I went to lunch at a small diner where we could talk privately. You're doing the right thing, she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. I know, but it doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm destroying my family. Marcus destroyed your family when he decided to steal from you. You're just defending yourself. What if he really believes I'm incompetent? What if he's convinced himself he's helping me? Then he's delusional, Helen. You're sharp as a tack. You're managing a household, paying bills, driving, cooking, living independently. There's nothing wrong with your mind. His actions show he knows that, because he's deliberately trying to make you look incompetent. That's what the electricity shutoff was about, creating evidence that you can't manage your affairs. My phone rang. Robert Chen. Mrs. Cartwright, we have a problem. Marcus just filed an emergency petition with probate court requesting immediate guardianship. He's claiming you're in imminent danger due to diminished mental capacity. What does that mean? It means there's a hearing scheduled for next week. If the judge grants the petition, Marcus becomes your legal guardian with control over all your decisions, medical, financial, residential. You'd essentially lose your autonomy. Can he do that? Unfortunately, yes. With his power of attorney and medical documentation, he can make a case. What medical documentation? That's what I'm trying to find out. He's submitted statements from medical professionals claiming you're showing signs of dementia. Do you know who these doctors are? I've never been evaluated for dementia. Then someone has falsified records or Marcus has doctors willing to lie. Either way, we need to counter it immediately. That psychiatric evaluation I scheduled, it's tomorrow morning. You need to ace it. I'll ace it. What else can I do? Gather supporters. People who can testify to your mental competency. Neighbors, friends, anyone who interacts with you regularly and can vouch for your cognitive function. And Mrs. Cartwright, you need to be prepared. If we lose this hearing, Marcus gets control. You'd be moved to a facility of his choosing, likely against your will. I can't let that happen. Then we fight. I'll see you tomorrow with the psychiatric evaluation results. In the meantime, stay safe. After Robert hung up, I looked at Lorraine across the table. He's trying to have me declared incompetent. There's a court hearing next week. Over my dead body, Lorraine said. We're fighting this, Helen. You have me, you have Robert, and we're going to get more people on your side. Who? Dorothy from down the street already offered. Who else? Your friends from church, your neighbors, your doctor, anyone who knows you're perfectly healthy. What about your mechanic? The woman at the grocery store you always chat with? The mailman you've known for 20 years? Start making a list. We spent the afternoon calling people, explaining the situation, asking for their help. Some were shocked, some had suspected something was wrong, but all of them agreed to write statements or appear at the hearing if needed. Dorothy came over that evening with a casserole and righteous fury. That boy of yours should be ashamed, she said. Using his own mother like this. It's financial abuse, plain and simple. My daughter is willing to testify about what Vanessa said at the medical center. If that helps. It helps, Lorraine assured her. Everything helps. That night, Marcus called again. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, I heard you went to the bank and removed me from your accounts. That was a mistake. You're not capable of managing your finances, and now you're going to hurt yourself. I've filed for guardianship to protect you. Don't fight this. It'll only make things worse for you. The hearing is next Thursday. You need a lawyer, but honestly, you're just wasting your money. The evidence is clear that you need help. I'll see you in court. The message ended. I played it back for Lorraine and Robert Chen when I called him. Save that, Robert said immediately. His own words show this is about control, not concern. Keep every voicemail, every text, every piece of communication. The psychiatric evaluation the next morning was extensive. Dr. Patricia Wong spent 3 hours putting me through memory tests, problem-solving exercises, questions about current events, and assessments of my ability to make decisions and understand consequences. She was thorough but kind, explaining each test and its purpose. Mrs. Cartwright, she said at the end, I'm going to be blunt. You have absolutely no signs of cognitive impairment. Your memory is excellent for your age. Your reasoning skills are sharp. You understand complex financial matters. You're making sound decisions. There's no medical basis whatsoever for declaring you incompetent. Can you put that in writing? I already am. She held up a form she'd been filling out. I'll have a full report ready by tomorrow, and I'll testify at the hearing if needed. Whatever your son is claiming about your mental state, it's not supported by any legitimate medical evaluation. 2 days before the hearing, things escalated. I woke up at 6 in the morning to pounding on my front door. I looked out to see Marcus and Vanessa standing on my porch with a man in a suit I didn't recognize. Lorraine came downstairs, having heard the noise from the guest room. Don't open it, she said. I looked through the peephole. Mom, Marcus shouted. Open the door. We need to talk. I'm not opening the door until you tell me who that man is. This is Dr. Richard Foster. He's here to do a cognitive assessment. You're scheduled for one. I already had an assessment. Dr. Wong's report is being filed with the court today. Dr. Foster is a specialist in dementia and cognitive decline. He needs to evaluate you before the hearing. I didn't agree to any evaluation. I'm not letting a stranger into my house, especially one you brought. Mrs. Cartwright. Dr. Foster called through the door. I understand you're feeling defensive, but this evaluation is in your best interests. Your son is concerned about your welfare. I have my own psychiatrist. I don't need yours. Your refusal to cooperate demonstrates exactly the kind of poor judgment we're concerned about, Vanessa said. A competent person would welcome a medical evaluation. A competent person doesn't let strangers in her house just because her son demands it. I took out my phone. I'm calling my lawyer. And the police if you don't leave my property. They argued for another few minutes but eventually left. Robert Chen called moments later. Marcus just filed an emergency motion claiming you're refusing medical care and showing signs of paranoid delusions. He's asking the judge to grant immediate temporary guardianship, pending the full hearing. Can he do that? It's a long shot, but he's trying. The good news is Dr. Wong's evaluation directly contradicts everything he's claiming. We have a strong case. What's the bad news? Family court judges tend to err on the side of caution. If Marcus can create enough doubt about your competency, the judge might grant temporary guardianship just to be safe while sorting things out. If that happens, Marcus gets control. For at least a few weeks, yes. Then we take it to trial and prove you're competent. But that takes time. Time I might spend locked in a memory care facility. Possibly. Which is why we need to win on Thursday. Everything depends on that hearing. The days leading up to the hearing were a blur of preparation. Robert coached me on what to expect, how to answer questions, how to present myself. Dress conservatively, he said. Be respectful to the judge. Answer questions clearly and completely. Don't let Marcus or his lawyer get you emotional or confused. Show that you're calm, rational, and fully in control. I can do that. You'll have to. Because they're going to try to rattle you. They'll ask about the electricity shutoff, about forgetting to pay bills, about your age and living situation. They'll paint a picture of a confused elderly woman who can't care for herself, and you have to calmly, clearly, dismantle that picture with facts. Wednesday night, I barely slept. Lorraine stayed up with me, making tea and telling stories about our childhood, trying to keep me distracted. You remember when you were 8 and you climbed that old oak tree in the backyard? She asked. You got stuck and Dad had to get a ladder to bring you down. You swore you weren't scared, but you cried the whole way down. I wasn't scared of falling. I was scared Dad would be angry. He was never angry. Just worried. That's what parents do. Worry about their kids. I worried about Marcus his whole life, I said quietly. Every scraped knee, every bad grade, every girlfriend who broke his heart. I worried I wasn't giving him enough, teaching him enough, preparing him enough. And now he's trying to steal everything from me. You didn't fail him, Helen. He failed you. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of October day that hints at winter. I dressed in my navy suit, the one I'd worn to Donald's funeral and hadn't touched since. Lorraine wore a professional-looking dress, and Robert met us at the courthouse in a crisp gray suit carrying a briefcase full of evidence. Marcus and Vanessa were already there with their lawyer, a sharp-faced woman in expensive clothes named Helen Cartwright. Marcus wouldn't look at me. Vanessa stared with undisguised hostility. Dr. Foster was there too, ready to testify, along with 2 other people I didn't recognize. Robert showed me to a bench outside the courtroom. Dr. Wong will testify, he said. Dorothy and 3 of your other neighbors are here. We have your bank statements, the police report, phone record showing Marcus's threatening calls. Everything we need. But Marcus has his own evidence, doesn't he? Yes. Medical opinions from Dr. Foster and others. Documentation of the utility shut off. A case file trying to prove you're incompetent. All rise, the bailiff called. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Sandra Patterson presiding. Judge Patterson was a woman in her late 50s, with silver hair pulled back severely and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She took her seat and surveyed the courtroom with an expression that gave away nothing about what she might be thinking. This is a petition for emergency guardianship, she said, looking at the papers in front of her. Marcus Cartwright seeking guardianship of his mother, Helen Cartwright, on grounds of diminished mental capacity. She looked up at me. Mrs. Cartwright, you're represented by Robert Chen. Yes, Your Honor. And you're contesting this petition. I am, Your Honor. I'm 71 years old, not incompetent. My son is trying to take control of my life and my finances, and I'm here to stop him. Judge Patterson's expression didn't change, but I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. We'll hear testimony from both sides and make a determination. Mr. Chen, you may call your first witness. Robert stood. I called Dr. Patricia Wong. Dr. Wong took the stand and was sworn in. She was calm and professional as Robert walked her through her credentials, her experience in geriatric psychiatry, and the evaluation she'd conducted on me 3 days ago. What was your assessment of Mrs. Cartwright's cognitive function? Robert asked. Mrs. Cartwright demonstrated excellent cognitive function across all measures, Dr. Wong said. Her memory is strong, both short-term and long-term. Her reasoning abilities are sharp. She understands complex financial matters and can articulate them clearly. She showed no signs of confusion, disorientation, or impaired judgment. Based on your evaluation, does Mrs. Cartwright require a guardian? Absolutely not. She's fully capable of managing her own affairs. Evelyn Cross, Marcus's attorney, stood for cross-examination. Dr. Wong, you conducted your evaluation at Mrs. Cartwright's request, correct? Yes. So she came to you specifically to get documentation supporting her claim of competency. She came to me for an objective evaluation, and you found exactly what she wanted you to find. I found the truth based on standardized assessments and 30 years of clinical experience. Isn't it possible that Mrs. Cartwright was simply having a good day? That her cognitive function fluctuates? Dementia and cognitive decline show consistent patterns. Miss Cross. One good day doesn't erase underlying deficits. Mrs. Cartwright showed no such deficits. Her function was not just adequate, it was superior for her age group. But you only saw her once, for a few hours. How can you definitively say she doesn't have declining cognitive function? Because the tests I administered are specifically designed to detect cognitive impairment even in its early stages. Mrs. Cartwright passed every assessment with flying colors. If she had dementia or significant cognitive decline, it would have shown up in the results. Cross tried a few more angles, but Dr. Wong didn't budge. Her testimony was rock solid. Next, Robert called Dorothy Brennan, my neighbor. She testified about seeing me regularly, about our conversations at neighborhood meetings, about my clear thinking and independent living. She's sharp as anyone half her age, Dorothy said firmly. She manages her property, tends her garden, handles her own shopping and cooking. I've never seen any sign of confusion or memory problems. Cross asked Dorothy if she had medical training. She admitted she didn't, so you're not qualified to assess cognitive function. I'm qualified to observe my neighbor over several years and notice whether she seems confused or incompetent. She doesn't. Then Robert called the police officer, Sergeant Mills, who testified about my report of financial exploitation. Mrs. Cartwright came to the station with documentation, bank records, a clear timeline of events. She was organized, coherent, and presented her case logically. There was nothing about her behavior that suggested cognitive impairment. Finally, Lorraine took the stand. She testified about our relationship, about my competence, about finding me managing my household independently when she arrived. My sister is one of the smartest, most capable people I know, Lorraine said, looking directly at the judge. She's been living alone successfully since her husband died 5 years ago. She drives, she cooks, she manages the household and property. The only problem she's having is a son who's stealing from her and trying to gaslight everyone into thinking she's incompetent so he can take control of her assets. Objection, Cross said sharply. The witness is making accusations without evidence. Sustained, Judge Patterson said. Mrs. Foster, please stick to your observations of your sister's mental state. Lorraine nodded. My sister is fully competent. This guardianship petition is a power grab, nothing more. When Robert finished, Cross called her witnesses. First was Dr. Richard Foster, the man who'd shown up at my door. He testified that in his professional opinion, based on his attempted evaluation and review of my history, I showed signs of cognitive decline and poor judgment. Based on what evidence? Robert asked during cross-examination. Mrs. Cartwright refused to allow me to evaluate her, which itself demonstrates paranoid thinking and poor judgment. Or it demonstrates appropriate caution about letting a stranger into her home at the demand of someone who's been stealing from her. Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence. I withdrew the characterization but pressed on. Dr. Foster, you never actually evaluated Mrs. Cartwright, did you? Not formally, but her refusal to cooperate speaks volumes. So your entire opinion is based on the fact that a 71-year-old woman didn't want to let a stranger in her house. Is that correct? Cross objected again, and the judge sustained it, but the point was made. Dr. Foster's testimony was based on nothing concrete. Then Cross called Marcus to the stand. My son sat in the witness chair looking earnest and concerned, playing the role of the worried son perfectly. He testified about my age, about living alone, about the electricity being shut off. I got a call from my mother saying her power was out, he said. When I looked into it, I discovered she hadn't paid her electric bill in months. The account was thousands of dollars past due. That terrified me because my mother has always been responsible with bills, It was a clear sign something was wrong. "And what did you do?" Cross asked. "I tried to talk to her about it, about getting help managing her affairs. She became defensive and paranoid. Started accusing me of stealing from her, which was heartbreaking. I have power of attorney specifically to help her, and she was turning it into something sinister." "Did you take any money from your mother's accounts?" "Only what was necessary to help her. Small transfers to cover expenses she was forgetting to pay. Everything I did was to protect her assets, not to steal from them." "That's a lie," I said loudly before I could stop myself. Judge Patterson looked at me sharply. "Mrs. Cartwright, you'll have your chance to testify. Outbursts will not be tolerated." "I apologize, Your Honor." Robert conducted the cross-examination, and he was merciless. "Mr. Cartwright, you testified that you transferred money from your mother's account to cover expenses she was forgetting." "Yes." "Can you explain why those transfers went to your wife's personal account?" "Some of them did, yes. Vanessa was helping me coordinate my mother's care. It was easier to consolidate funds." "How much money have you transferred from your mother's accounts in the past 6 months?" "I don't have an exact figure. The bank records show over $30,000. That's a lot of expenses. Some of that was for necessary purchases, like solar panels for your house." Objection. Cross stood. "Irrelevant." "Your Honor," Robert said, "it's directly relevant to whether Mr. Cartwright was acting in his mother's best interests or his own." "I'll allow it," Judge Patterson said. "Answer the question." "Mr. Cartwright, the solar panels were a separate matter. Funded with your own money?" "Partially." "And partially with money you took from your mother without her knowledge or consent while you were letting her electricity get shut off for non-payment." "I was trying to protect her assets by consolidating bills." "By stealing from her." Objection. I rephrase. "By taking $30,000 without her permission while she lived in the dark." That's not what happened. Then explain why you canceled your mother's automatic bill payments without telling her. "I was reorganizing her finances to make her look incompetent so you could justify taking control." That's ridiculous. Is it? You canceled her bill payments, redirected her mail, let her utilities get shut off, and then used that as evidence she couldn't manage her affairs. That sounds like a deliberate plan to make her appear incompetent. "I was trying to help her by stealing from her and then filing for guardianship to cover your tracks." Objection. Cross was on her feet. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained, Judge Patterson said. But she was looking at Marcus with an expression that wasn't sympathetic. "Move on, Mr. Chen." Robert entered the bank records into evidence. The police report. Phone records showing Marcus's threatening voicemails. By the time he was done, Marcus looked less like a concerned son and more like exactly what he was. A thief. Then it was my turn to testify. I walked to the stand with my head high and my hands steady, even though inside I was shaking. Robert walked me through my daily life, my routines, my independence. I described managing my household, paying my bills, until Marcus canceled the automatic payments without my knowledge. I testified about discovering the missing money, about the solar panels on his house while my electricity was shut off, about his threats to have me declared incompetent if I didn't cooperate. Cross's cross-examination was aggressive. "Mrs. Cartwright, you claim you didn't know your electricity bill was unpaid for months. How is that possible if you're as competent as you claim?" "Because someone had canceled my automatic payment and redirected my mail. I never received bills or shut-off notices. But you should have noticed the money staying in your account. My account has multiple transactions. I didn't notice one payment stopping among dozens. That sounds like poor financial management. It sounds like trusting my son not to sabotage my accounts. You've accused your son of theft, of conspiracy, of deliberately trying to make you look incompetent. Don't those accusations sound paranoid? They would if they weren't true. I have bank records showing exactly where my money went." "Mrs. Cartwright, isn't it possible you're simply having trouble accepting that you need help? That your son is acting out of genuine concern and you're misinterpreting his actions?" "No. Because concerned sons don't steal $30,000. They don't install solar panels for themselves while letting their mothers live without electricity. They don't threaten their mothers with forced institutionalization. My son is not concerned about me. He's concerned about my assets. Judge Patterson called a recess after my testimony. Lorraine and I sat on a bench in the hallway while Robert made phone calls and reviewed notes. How do you think it went? I asked. I think the judge sees what's really happening, Robert said. But family court is unpredictable. She might still grant temporary guardianship just to be cautious. I can't let that happen. Then we need the closing arguments to be devastating. When court resumed, Evelyn Cross gave her closing argument first. Your Honor, this is a sad case of an elderly woman who's lost capacity but doesn't recognize it. The evidence shows Mrs. Cartwright failed to pay her bills, forgot about critical utilities, and then became paranoid when her son tried to help. Marcus Cartwright has power of attorney. He was acting within his legal authority to manage his mother's affairs. His transfers of funds were to cover expenses and coordinate care. Mrs. Cartwright's accusations of theft are unfounded and demonstrate exactly the kind of confused, paranoid thinking that necessitates guardianship. For her own safety and well-being, we ask that you grant this petition. Robert stood for his closing. Your Honor, what we've seen today is not a case of diminished capacity. It's a case of financial exploitation. Marcus Cartwright systematically stole from his mother. He canceled her automatic payments to create evidence of incompetence. He let her utilities be shut off while using her money to install solar panels on his own house. When she discovered what he was doing, he threatened her and filed for guardianship to maintain control and cover his tracks. Dr. Wong's evaluation proves Mrs. Cartwright is fully competent. The bank records prove Marcus Cartwright is a thief. This petition should be denied, and Mrs. Cartwright should be free to manage her own affairs without interference from a son who's proven he cannot be trusted. Judge Patterson reviewed her notes for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked up. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony presented today, and I'm troubled by what I've seen. The medical evidence clearly shows Mrs. Cartwright is cognitively intact and capable of managing her own affairs. Dr. Wong's evaluation was thorough and professional. Dr. Foster's opinion, based on no actual evaluation, carries little weight. The financial records show a pattern of transfers from Mrs. Cartwright's accounts to her son and daughter-in-law that are difficult to explain as acting in her best interests. The timing of the utility shutoff and the simultaneous installation of expensive solar panels on Mr. $7 Cartwright's property is particularly concerning. She looked at Marcus. Mr. Cartwright, your testimony that you were acting to protect your mother's assets is contradicted by the evidence showing you were enriching yourself at her expense. The cancellation of automatic payments appears designed to create evidence of incompetence rather than to help organize her finances. I'm denying the petition for guardianship. Mrs. Cartwright has demonstrated she's fully capable of managing her own affairs. Furthermore, I'm ordering that any power of attorney held by Marcus Cartwright is immediately revoked. He is prohibited from accessing his mother's financial accounts or making any decisions on her behalf. Additionally, Judge Patterson continued, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of potential financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The evidence presented today suggests criminal conduct that warrants further review. Finally, I'm granting Mrs. Cartwright's request for a restraining order. Marcus Cartwright and Vanessa Cartwright are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Cartwright or coming within 500 feet of her person or property for a period of 1 year. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. The courtroom was silent. Marcus's face had gone white. Vanessa looked furious. Evelyn Cross was already gathering her papers, clearly wanting to leave. Your Honor, Cross said, we intend to appeal. That's your right, Judge Patterson said. But the orders I've issued today are effective immediately. Mr. Cartwright, do you understand the terms of the restraining order? Marcus nodded, unable to speak. Then this hearing is concluded. Court is adjourned. I sat there for a moment, unable to process what had just happened. I'd won. The judge had seen through Marcus's lies, had protected me, had referred him for criminal prosecution. It was over. Helen, Robert said gently, touching my arm. We should go. I stood on shaking legs. Lorraine was crying. Dorothy and the other neighbors who'd testified were smiling. We walked out of the courtroom past Marcus and Vanessa, who wouldn't look at me. In the hallway, Lorraine pulled me into a tight hug. You did it. You stood up to him, and you won. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to. Robert shook my hand. Congratulations, Mrs. Cartwright. This is a significant victory. What happens now? The district attorney will investigate. They may file criminal charges against Marcus for financial exploitation. You should also consider filing a civil suit to recover the money he took. Will I get it back? Possibly. If he has assets, you can try to reclaim what he stole. But that's a process that takes time. I thought about the $30,000. Money Donald and I had saved over decades. Money that was supposed to sustain me through my final years. Money Marcus had taken as if it meant nothing. I want to pursue it, I said. I want him held accountable for everything he did. Then we'll file the paperwork next week. For now, go home. Rest. Celebrate. You've been through hell. And you came out the other side. That night, Lorraine and I sat in my living room with glasses of wine neither of us really wanted. The house felt different, lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted. I keep expecting to feel relief, I said. But mostly I just feel sad. You lost your son today, Lorraine said quietly. Not in the way that matters most, but still. That's worth grieving. I thought I knew him. I thought I raised a good man. You raised a man who made bad choices. That's not the same as raising a bad man. Though I'm not sure the distinction matters much right now. Do you think he'll appeal? Probably. But the evidence is clear. I don't see how another judge would rule differently. What about the criminal investigation? That could take months. Maybe longer. And there's no guarantee they'll prosecute. These cases are complicated, especially when family is involved. I sipped my wine, thinking about what the next months would look like. Legal battles, investigations, the constant stress of waiting for the other shoe to drop, but also freedom. Control over my own life again. The ability to make my own decisions without fear that my son would undermine me. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from the district attorney's office informing me that they were opening a formal investigation into Marcus's handling of my finances. They wanted to interview me, review documents, build a case. I met with a prosecutor named James Whitfield, a man in his 40s with tired eyes who'd clearly seen too many families destroy themselves over money. These cases are difficult, he told me honestly. We have to prove criminal intent, that your son knew he was acting against your interests and did it anyway. The power of attorney complicates things because it gave him legal authority to access your accounts. But the pattern of behavior, the canceled payments, the timing of everything, it builds a case for exploitation. What are the chances you'll prosecute? 50-50. We need to gather more evidence, interview Marcus and his wife, review all the financial records. If we can prove he was deliberately making you look incompetent to justify taking control, that strengthens the case significantly. I provided everything I had. Bank statements, phone records, the documentation of the electricity shutoff. James took notes and promised to keep me informed. Don't expect quick results, he warned. Justice moves slowly. A month after the hearing, Lorraine had to return to Pennsylvania. I hated to see her go. But she had her own life, her own responsibilities. You'll be okay, she said as we stood in my driveway next to her rental car. You're stronger than you think. Come visit for Christmas. I'd like that. And Helen, if you need anything at all, you call me. Day or night. Promise. I promise. After she left, the house felt empty in a way it hadn't before. I'd gotten used to having her there, to not being alone with my thoughts and fears. But I couldn't depend on her forever. I had to learn to live with what had happened, to build a life that wasn't defined by betrayal. I started slowly. Small things. I changed all my passwords, set up new security questions using answers only I would know. I opened a new bank account at a different institution and transferred most of my money there, leaving just enough in the old account to cover bills. I installed a security system with cameras covering my front door, driveway, and backyard. I got a new phone number and gave it only to people I trusted. Then I did something I'd been avoiding. I went through all the photographs in my house, every picture of Marcus from childhood to adulthood, and I put them away. Not thrown out, because I couldn't quite bring myself to do that, but packed in boxes in the basement where I wouldn't have to see them every day. The house looked sparse afterward, walls that had held family photos now holding nothing, but it felt honest. Those pictures represented a relationship that no longer existed, a son I thought I had but didn't. Dorothy checked on me regularly, stopping by with cookies or casseroles, never staying long but making sure I was okay. Other neighbors did the same. The Hendersons brought me tomatoes from their garden. The Kwans invited me to their daughter's birthday party. People I'd known casually for years became something closer to real friends. They'd seen what happened, how Marcus had treated me, and they'd chosen my side. That meant more than I could express. 3 months after the hearing, I received a summons. Marcus was suing me. The petition claimed I had made false accusations against him, damaged his reputation, and caused him emotional distress. He was seeking $200,000 in damages. I called Robert Chen immediately. Can he do this? He can file the suit, but it's unlikely to succeed. Truth is an absolute defense to defamation, and everything you said about him was documented and proven in court. This is harassment, a way to continue punishing you for standing up to him. What do I do? We respond, we defend, and we file a countersuit for malicious prosecution. This is going to cost money. The solar panels alone were $40,000 he bought with money he stole from you. We'll seek to reclaim that in the countersuit along with the rest of what he took. How long will this take? Months, possibly a year or more. Civil litigation moves slowly, but Mrs. Cartwright, you've already won the important battle. Your autonomy is secure. This is just him lashing out. Don't let it intimidate you. I tried not to let it intimidate me, but the lawsuit was a constant weight. Every time I saw an envelope from a law firm, my stomach clenched. Every court date, every deposition, every piece of paperwork felt like Marcus reaching into my life and hurting me again. The district attorney's investigation continued slowly. They interviewed Vanessa, who claimed ignorance of everything. They interviewed the bank employees, reviewed transaction records, built their case brick by brick. 6 months after the initial hearing, James Whitfield called me. We're moving forward with charges, he said. Financial exploitation of an elderly person, forgery for the signatures on the bank documents, and fraud. If convicted, Marcus is looking at possible prison time. Prison. My son might go to prison because of me. He might go to prison because of his own actions. You didn't commit the crimes. He did. The trial was scheduled for 8 months out. I tried to prepare myself mentally, emotionally, but how do you prepare to testify against your own child in a criminal trial? How do you stand up in court and say, yes, this person I raised, this person I loved is a criminal who deserves punishment? Lorraine flew out for the trial. So did several of my neighbors. Robert Chen sat with me even though the prosecutor was handling the case. Moral support, he said. You shouldn't have to go through this alone. The trial lasted 4 days. The prosecutor presented bank records, testimony from financial experts, evidence of Marcus's deception. Marcus's defense attorney argued that everything he'd done was within the scope of his power of attorney, that he'd been trying to help me, that any mistakes were errors in judgment, not criminal acts. I testified on day 3. The prosecutor asked me to describe what Marcus had done, how it had affected me, whether I'd given permission for any of the transfers or account changes. I said no to all of it. I never authorized him to take money from me. I never asked him to cancel my bill payments or redirect my mail. Everything he did was against my wishes and without my knowledge. The defense attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, as an angry mother turning on her son. But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records didn't lie. Neither did the timing of events. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood and read the verdicts. Guilty on all counts. Marcus showed no emotion. Vanessa, sitting behind him, started crying quietly. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief. Just a hollow sense of finality. Sentencing was scheduled for a month later. The prosecutor asked for prison time, arguing that Marcus had betrayed a position of trust and stolen from a vulnerable parent. The defense asked for probation, community service, restitution but no jail time. Judge Patterson, the same judge who'd heard the guardianship case, listened to both sides. "Mr. Cartwright," she said finally, "you violated your mother's trust in the most fundamental way. You stole from her. You tried to make her appear incompetent, and when she fought back, you retaliated with lawsuits and threats. The evidence shows a pattern of exploitation and manipulation that warrants serious consequences. I'm sentencing you to 3 years in prison, suspended to 18 months, followed by 5 years of probation. You will repay your mother every dollar you took, with interest. You will have no contact with her during your probation unless she initiates it and agrees. And you will complete 200 hours of community service working with elderly populations so you can learn what real care looks like." Marcus was led away in handcuffs. Vanessa left the courtroom without looking at me. I sat there feeling like I should feel something more than this empty exhaustion. Outside, reporters were waiting. I'd become something of a local story. Elderly woman fights back against thieving son, wins justice. I didn't want to talk to any of them. Robert and Lorraine created a barrier, guiding me to the parking lot and away from cameras and questions. At home, I sat in my living room and tried to process what had happened. Marcus was going to prison. My son, the baby I'd held and nursed and raised, was a convicted criminal because of testimony I'd given. Even knowing he deserved it, even knowing he'd brought it on himself, it hurt in a way that had no name. "You did the right thing," Lorraine said, sitting beside me. "I know, but knowing doesn't make it hurt less. It's not supposed to. If it didn't hurt, that would mean you didn't love him. And you did love him. You probably still do. In some complicated way. I do. I hate what he did. I'm glad he's being held accountable and I still love him. I don't know how to reconcile those things. Maybe you're not supposed to. Maybe you just live with the contradiction." The civil lawsuit Marcus had filed against me was dismissed a week later, the judge citing the criminal conviction as proof that my accusations had been truthful. Robert filed the countersuit seeking to recover the stolen money plus legal fees and damages. It would take time, but the court had ordered restitution as part of Marcus's sentence, so recovery was almost certain. Almost. I'd learned not to count on anything when it came to Marcus. Life slowly returned to something resembling normal. The seasons changed, autumn giving way to winter. I hosted Thanksgiving with Lorraine and a few neighbors, grateful for people who'd become family when blood relatives had failed me. Christmas was quiet, just me and Dorothy's family. I sent no card or gift to Marcus in prison. Some wounds ran too deep for holiday sentiment. The house felt like mine again in a way it hadn't in years. Every corner held memories of Donald, of raising Marcus, of building a life I'd thought was secure. But now it also held new memories. Fighting for myself, standing up to manipulation, learning I was stronger than I'd known. I started volunteering at the senior center, teaching computer classes to other older adults. Many of them had similar stories of family members trying to take advantage, stealing money or pressuring them to sign documents they didn't understand. I shared my experience, encouraged them to seek help, reminded them they had rights, and shouldn't be afraid to defend themselves. One woman, Grace, told me her daughter had been stealing her Social Security checks for months. We went to the police together. Another, Henry, discovered his son had forged his name on a reverse mortgage. I gave him Robert Chen's number. Helping others made my own trauma feel more purposeful. If my experience could prevent someone else from being victimized, then maybe it meant something. Maybe it wasn't just pointless pain, but a lesson that could protect others. Spring came with crocuses pushing through the last snow, and birds returning to nest in the oak tree Donald had planted. I hired a landscaping company to update the yard, planting flowers and shrubs that would require minimal maintenance but add color and life. The house needed paint, so I hired painters. The kitchen needed updating, so I hired contractors. I spent some of the money Marcus had stolen and been ordered to repay, making my home truly mine again. Marcus served his 18 months and was released on probation. I received a letter from the probation office informing me of his release and reminding me of the no-contact order. He wasn't allowed to reach out to me, but I could contact him if I chose. I chose not to. Some relationships, once broken, couldn't be repaired. Some betrayals were simply too deep. Vanessa divorced him while he was in prison. I heard through Dorothy, who heard through someone else, that she'd claimed she'd never known what Marcus was doing, that he'd lied to her too. Maybe that was true. Maybe she'd been a victim as much as an accomplice. I didn't care enough to find out. 2 years after the trial, I received a check for $37,000, the stolen money plus interest and a portion of the civil judgment. It wasn't everything, but it was most of it. Enough to replenish my savings, to feel secure again financially. I deposited the check and felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. This chapter was ending. I was 73 years old, living alone but not lonely, managing my life independently and successfully. The house I'd almost lost was secure. The money that had been stolen was mostly recovered. The son who'd betrayed me was out of my life, and while that hurt, it hurt less than having him in my life destroying it from the inside. One afternoon in early summer, I was working in my garden when a car pulled up. A young woman got out, mid-20s, with dark hair and a nervous expression. "Mrs. Cartwright?" she asked. Walking toward me, I stood, brushing dirt from my knees. "Can I help you? I'm Emma, Marcus's daughter." From before he married Vanessa, I stared at her. Marcus had a daughter he'd never mentioned, never introduced, never acknowledged in any of the proceedings or trial. "I didn't know you existed." "He never talked about me." She gave a sad smile. "My mom raised me alone. He paid child support when forced to, but he was never really part of my life. I'm sorry to just show up like this, but I wanted to meet you. I wanted to say I'm sorry for what he did to you. You don't have anything to apologize for. His actions aren't your responsibility. I know, but you're my grandmother, and I wanted you to know that not everyone in our family is like him." I invited her inside. We sat in my kitchen over iced tea, and she told me about her life. Her mother had raised her in Columbus, working 2 jobs to make ends while Marcus sent minimal support and rarely visited. Emma had put herself through college, was working as a teacher now, engaged to a good man who treated her well. "I've kept up with the trial," she said. "What he did to you, it wasn't surprising. He was always about money, always calculating what he could get from people. I'm glad you fought back. I'm glad you won. Why come see me now? Because I wanted you to know you have family who cares about you. My mom always said you probably didn't know about me, that Marcus probably never mentioned he had a kid before his marriage. She was right. But now you do. And if you want, I'd like to get to know you. I'd like that too." Emma became a regular presence in my life after that. She visited every few weeks, sometimes bringing her fiancé David, sometimes coming alone. We cooked together, watched old movies, talked about everything and nothing. She called me Grandma, and it felt right in a way that surprised me. This girl, this young woman I hadn't known existed, was giving me a piece of family I thought I'd lost forever. "She's getting married this fall," she told me one afternoon 6 months after that first visit. "Small ceremony, just close friends and family. I'd really like you to be there, if you're comfortable with it." "Will Marcus be there?" "No. I haven't invited him. I don't want him in my life any more than you do." "Then, I'd be honored to attend." The wedding was beautiful, intimate, and warm, exactly what Emma had described. I sat in the front row as she married David in a garden ceremony filled with flowers and joy. Afterward, at the small reception, she introduced me to her friends as her grandmother, and no one questioned it. Family was who loved you, who showed up, who chose you day after day. Blood was just blood. Life continued its steady rhythm. I was 74 now, healthy and active, still living independently in the house I'd fought to keep. The solar panels on Marcus's old house, ironically, were repossessed when he couldn't make payments after prison. He'd moved to a small apartment across town, working some job I didn't ask about. I saw him once, by accident, in a grocery store. We made eye contact across the produce section. He looked away first. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just a distant observation that this person had once been important to me and wasn't anymore. Dorothy and her family, Emma and David, Lorraine visiting from Pennsylvania, my neighbors and friends from the senior center. These were my people now. This was my family. On my 75th birthday, Emma and David hosted a party at their new house. 40 people showed up, most of whom I'd met in the last few years. Dorothy gave a speech about what a fighter I was. Lorraine told embarrassing stories from our childhood. Emma presented me with a photo album she'd made, filled with pictures from the past 5 years. Holidays, dinners, garden parties, ordinary moments that added up to an extraordinary new beginning. As I looked through the album, I realized something. The electricity shut off, Marcus's betrayal, the trial, all of it had been terrible, but it had also been necessary. I'd spent too many years being complacent, trusting blindly, letting other people define my worth and control my choices. Marcus's theft had forced me to fight, to claim my own power, to learn I was capable of far more than I'd believed. I wouldn't have chosen this path, but walking it had made me someone I was proud to be. That night, back in my own house, I sat on the deck Donald had built so many years ago. The solar-powered lights I'd installed myself, because I'd learned to do things myself, glowed softly in the darkness. The oak tree rustled overhead. Somewhere in the neighborhood, someone was having a barbecue, laughter floating on the evening air. I thought about the woman I'd been 5 years ago, trusting, passive, alone. And I thought about who I was now, still alone in some ways but not lonely, still trusting, but wisely, still kind, but no longer weak. I'd survived being betrayed by my own son. I'd fought back and won. I'd built a new life from the ruins of the old one. I'd learned that family wasn't always blood, that strength came in unexpected forms, and that starting over at 71 wasn't an ending but a beginning. The electricity had been shut off, but I'd found my own light. The solar panels had gone to thieves, but I discovered I was my own source of power. And that, I thought as fireflies began their evening dance across the yard, was worth everything it had cost to learn. 5 years had transformed everything. The house that nearly became a prison now stood as proof of what determination could accomplish. Helen walked through rooms she'd reclaimed with her own strength, past walls that no longer held photographs of false memories, into a kitchen where Emma and David were teaching their 3-year-old daughter to make cookies. Grandma Helen, the little girl called, holding up flour-covered hands. "Look what I made. Beautiful, sweetheart. Just like you." The words came easily now, this grandmother role she'd never expected to have. Emma caught her eye and smiled, understanding passing between them without words. They'd built something real from the wreckage Marcus had left behind. The doorbell rang. Dorothy, with her weekly casserole, probably, or Lorraine arriving early for their planned shopping trip. But when Helen opened the door, she found Marcus standing on the porch. Thinner, grayer, his expensive clothes replaced with something humble. "Mom," he said quietly, "I know I'm not supposed to be here, but I needed to tell you something." Helen's hand tightened on the doorknob. The restraining order had expired 2 years ago, but this was the first time he'd approached. "You shouldn't be here. I know. I'll leave if you want. But please just listen for 1 minute." She didn't move, didn't speak, so he continued. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, doesn't undo what I did. But I need you to know I understand now what I took from you. Not just money. Your trust, your peace, your sense of safety. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Helen studied the man who'd once been her son. She saw genuine remorse in his eyes, the weight of consequences he'd carried. Part of her wanted to accept the apology, to rebuild something. But a wiser part, the part that had learned hard lessons, knew better. Some bridges once burned couldn't be rebuilt. "I appreciate you saying that," she said finally. "I hope you've changed. I hope you treat people better now. But I can't have you in my life, Marcus. What you did damaged something that can't be repaired." "I understand." He nodded, tears visible. "I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." He turned to leave, then looked back. "I heard Emma had a baby. Congratulations. You'd make a wonderful grandmother." "I am a wonderful grandmother," Helen said quietly. "Goodbye, Marcus." She closed the door and stood for a moment, hand pressed against the wood. Then she returned to the kitchen where her real family waited, where a small child laughed and cookies baked and love existed without conditions or betrayal. This was her life now. This was enough. This was everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.